This is Bradley Gareth, voice of Guel Jeturk from Witch from Mercury, and you're watching Spoiler Force.
All right, so this is episode 166 of Spoiler Force Podcast. My name is Ricky, and thank you for tuning in. This week's guest is a voice actor that I'm super excited to have on this show. You may have heard his voice from My Hero Academia, Blue Lock, the latest anime right now, Hell's Paradise. But he's also on one of my favorite shows on this current season from Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury. He's the voice of Guel Jeturk, one of my favorite characters. Let me bring on Bradley Gareth. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Dude, thank you for doing this, man. Like I remember when I initially first reached out to you, you were you were busy, but I didn't know. Are you just recently engaged? If you don't mind me asking.
Yes, we just got engaged. It was our 10th anniversary in April for dating, and then we got engaged on our 10th anniversary. So it's been a time.
Yeah. So like, because I saw that like after you replied, and I saw that on your Twitter, I'm like, oh, so that's what's happening. So okay, so I didn't want to like intrude or like make it seem like I was pushing. So I waited, But I'm glad that you're able to do this, man. Especially with Gundam almost coming to an end too. It's gonna be hard not to geek out because, like I said in the intro, Guel is one of my favorite characters.
That's so nice of you. Thank you.
For fans and listeners who don't know, Bradley, how did you get into just voice acting in general?
Sure. So I got into voice acting. Well, it would be about 2011. So it's been about 12 years. I did like theater when I was a kid, which is I think a pretty common story. Nothing like I wasn't like performing on Broadway. It was like the local community theater and like the school that I went to. I went to Catholic school when I was in elementary, so I did like church plays. A funny story. I insisted we were doing a play because the principal would like write all these plays herself. I don't know. I guess she wanted to be a writer instead of a principal. Who knows? But it was this like Russian play about like a Russian shoemaker, and then like I played Jesus, little 7-year-old Jesus. And I insisted on giving Jesus a British accent. I can't tell you why I did that, but that was my first big acting choice. So from there, I did a local theater. My brother did all the musicals and stuff in high school, and then he went on to like study musical theater in college. So by the time I came to high school, it was sort of expected that I'd also do musical theater, which I did. Did okay at it. I was in pretty big roles throughout like high school, but I mean like it's small, middle of nowhere Pennsylvania. Again, we're not like touring. This is just we perform for our families, and of course the families are like, yeah, that's good because you have to be pretty bad to have your own parents boo you off stage. Uh, but this gives me the confidence to like look around online, and whenever I was looking around online, very specifically, I remember because for anyone out there that likes Pokemon, there's the Pokemon manga of I believe in Japan it's Pokemon Adventures. Here it's Pokemon Special, or it's the other way around. I think in Japan it's Pokemon Special. Here it's Pokemon Adventures. And it's never been animated. It is just a manga, but it's covered like every single Pokemon game. And which means it's like 70 something volumes whenever you total it all together. And there was a fan project to like animate it. And I saw this fan project. I'm like just on the cusp of turning like 16 years old, and I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. I want to audition because they had open auditions, and I bought like a $20 microphone from like the Dollar General. And then I audition, and they're like, hey, this is probably not going to come out anytime in the next like 5 years. You should go over to this other website, which is called Voice Acting Alliance, and do stuff over there. And if you're an old voice acting head who like started voice acting in the last like 15 to 20 years, you probably recognize that name because Voice Acting Alliance is where like God, what's her name? Like Kira Buckland did stuff there. Mika Sayasa did stuff there. Erica Mendez did stuff there. Like a bunch of people that are really big now did stuff on VAA, who have come up in the scene. And it was a bit of a disaster for him because it's a hobbyist for him. There used to be a lot of different stuff there, but from there, tumultuous beginnings, it was still a lot of fun, and I was like, I want to do this, I think, forever. And my big goal was always getting to be an anime. I lived up in Pennsylvania. I I knew even back then, they told me, everybody told me, they would say in interviews of like con videos that I would see, because I couldn't go to conventions. There weren't any where I was living. They'd say, like, you have to move to Dallas or you have to move to LA. So I made the commitment to myself back in 2011. I'm like, I'm gonna move to Dallas. I'm gonna voice an anime. And then finally, come 2021, so about 10 years later, I moved down here. I did a bit in Kageki Shoujo in August, like, which was incidental. I had gone in for something else, and they were like, "Hey, do this one line," and I did that, and I got to be in anime for the first time. So 10 years out. It took me 10 years from when I decided to be a voice actor to when I finally got to do anime. So bear that in mind. The journey is long and circuitous.
That is really cool, man. Like I just appreciate the just hearing your experience from just going from like a small town to where you are at now, especially in Dallas, where there's so much talent here too. And then you're also doing like remote work if you've done that. Like then there's also like the people from LA and from New York, and everyone's getting into the whole the anime acting environment now. But that's cool, man. I think that's a big I don't want to say big risk, but like that's a big move, from just going from somewhere comfortable to going to like a big city like Dallas, because that's what I did too for the podcast here. Like I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, so there's not like a lot of cons there either, but it
Yeah.
wasn't at the like the level here like in Dallas where there's one almost every weekend, and
Yeah, 100% no. Absolutely not.
yeah, so for me, like it was a big step up. But then, I want to get back to just your experience too, man. That just did you find it, I guess, intimidating when you first came down to Dallas and just started trying to get roles here? Like, was it, were you, was there certain like, I guess, jobs that you were looking for when it came to like shows or just like voiceover in general?
So when I moved down here, well, first of all, I was gonna move down in 2020, and then a little something happened that kind of delayed that. Um, but moving down to Dallas, I mean, it was always going to be intimidating because it was a big move. I'd actually flown down because I was thinking about going to college here in 2013 whenever I graduated high school, and I got I got here to like tour SMU because I was applying there, and I was auditioning to go to like their musical theater program. And I remember I got to the hotel, I just started sobbing. So I was just like, oh god, it's so far from home. But come 2021, I had at least something resembling a plan. Because I had spent so much time sort of building up just to make sure that I could be okay. So well, initially, moving down here, I'm going to tell anyone who is thinking of moving, to Dallas, LA, anywhere big for like this type of work, having a job when you get there is important. I, for a long time, was like worried I wouldn't have one. So I was like applying ahead of time, like months out from when I knew we'd be moving. And thankfully, I talked to my job that I was working at in Pennsylvania at the time. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna move, so I probably have to leave this position. But I'd already been working remotely because of COVID, so they were like, well, you could just keep doing that. And thankfully, I've been able to keep that job since then. So that's been able to pay the bills. So that was one huge thing that was like a weight off my shoulders, was not having to look for like daytime employment, which you are almost certainly going to need, unless you are already like really plugged into doing voiceover to the degree that like I've met a couple people who will do remote voiceover for commercials and like explainer videos and other things like that, like the corporate side of voiceover that can actually pay like a livable wage before you start doing character stuff. I've met people who did that and then moved down here, but that's a different track. You really have to dedicate yourself to that, which I did not have time to do. I like went to college and then had to figure out paying rent. The easiest way to get into like the corporate side is to have enough money and support to like do that from like your parents' house and then move out on your own, because you're not going to make money for the first while. But other than that, I mean, like emotionally, like I was intimidated. I wasn't as bad as when I was 18 because again, I had freaked out in 2013 whenever I'd gotten here, and then I hadn't been to cons at that point either. So I'm glad I didn't move down here at first because anytime I would meet like a voice actor, like a famous voice actor, I would like freak out like, oh my god, you're so and so. Like I like there's pictures of me like meeting like Greg Ayers and like Richard Epcar, and my face is just contorted in like uh excitement and like horror of like, oh god, I'm gonna embarrass myself so bad in front of these people. From when I was like a teenager, and I'm glad I was not that bad by the time I moved down because like they don't want you to be like a fanboy in the booth. They don't want you to have to spend like 20 minutes calming down from freaking out that you're meeting like Jerry Jewell because you're like, oh, I love Case Closed. They need you to be like, all right, you come and you do your job and then you go home. So I at least I was little bit more emotionally prepared, a little bit more financially prepared, and I was like I had been spoken to about this. I fortunately also had a couple friends who had been working up to that point, like in the industry. Been longtime friends with Hayden Davio, one of my closest friends, and then Zach Aguilar, who's also a very close friend. And even though the LA market's very different, you know, he's always been pretty like blasé and casual about just yeah, you know, it's working with these people. It's you know, it's a job. You shouldn't freak out about it. And talking to Hayden, you know, there's the expectation at a lot of these studios are sort of putting in the time. So what that means is like I've also heard it as like waiting for your turn, which means like it's gonna take time to get in, right? To get called in at first at all. And then it's gonna take time for you to like move on from like Walla and Bits to being named characters to them being main characters. That takes time, and it takes trust. It takes like building up relationships with directors. It takes it's not something that like you can control. It's very not normal for people to come down here and like be ready to be like going to cons after like you know 6 months. So I came down. I wasn't doing anything for the first few months. I did that one bit in Kageki Shoujo and then nothing for several months, really. And I had to deal with that. Whenever I'd come down, you know, I was concerned about that, but my way of dealing with that, which did also help, if people want like a thought of what to do about that. I had saved up for several years. Living in Pennsylvania was much cheaper than living in Texas is.
Right.
So I had saved up and I had taken a bunch of classes with directors that I knew were good to take classes with. Richard Horvitz is a great person to take classes with. Crispin Freeman, Tony Oliver. I took a bunch of classes with people locally. You know, I took classes with Sean Gann, R. Bruce Elliott, Brian Massey, uh, Kyle Phillips. Like I worked to try to get in front of as many people as possible, and then also took like meticulous notes on like not only what they were saying, but like how other people in the class were doing. So I came down with a plan, and I tried to follow through on that plan and be like as proactive as possible, even if I wasn't working. I hope that answers your question. I know I'm like answering with like the paragraph answers that go way past the prompt on the page.
No, it's good. I like hearing people's experiences, man, because every actor I've spoken to, like there's always something similar that you guys have done to get to where you're at now. But just talking to some of these actors, man, like I know how hard it is to even try to get jobs here. And you know, one of the big fears is like when if you don't get a job anymore, and then you have to kind of like have another plan to make sure that you can be financially stable to live here and or to do whatever that you need to do in your life. But it's nice to know that you know that you've made these kind of friendships or network with like all these directors or different actors, man, because I like seeing that in the especially in the anime community, just seeing like how everyone is able to kind of like you know open doors for each other and stuff like that. Like I spoke with Molly Zhang, and she you know she actually like talked about how she knew some of these other actors and then how meeting directors and stuff like that was able to help her get to the jobs that she's got now. And it's also helped me
Yeah,
get to
100%.
speak with voice actors that she got to that she knows too. So it's really cool just to see how everyone has like their own little community or their own little like group of friends, you know. And I was gonna ask you, man, like was Walla something that you did too as well, like just starting up?
Yeah, I mean, I still do it. I'm still relatively new when it comes to like the industry, so yeah, absolutely. I haven't done Walla with Molly. I've worked with Molly before. We did. I'm pretty sure that we worked on Sakura, which was that Donnie Yen film together. She was directing me, and that was a lot of fun. I had done that remotely. For context, I should say this. So I started doing Walla in about April or May, no, it would be May of 2022. Um, and this is the very backwards way that my career worked, because this is I'll go into some inside baseball here. So I starting out in Walla is like what's considered normal at Crunchyroll. I don't know how familiar you are with like the satellite studios, but there are other studios that record for Crunchyroll that aren't like Crunchyroll main office. So those are like Sound Cadence Studios, Kocha Sound, Studio Nano, Okratron. Like these are companies that like license Crunchyroll shows and then they send it back to them. Like Bang Zoom, I think now kind of has that arrangement with streaming with them, but I know they do stuff externally and they predate. Well, I think they're as old or predate Funimation. So, but that's a whole separate thing. But the satellite studios basically function that way. And I had worked with Sound Cadence before because I had done Death Battle back in like 2018 or 2019. It was the Green Lantern versus Ben 10 one, funnily enough. The much
Really,
maligned one because people got super mad about it.
I had to go
But
back and watch that one.
yeah, it was the Green Lantern in that. But because of that relationship, I got brought in to do a bit part in a live action movie called Dinosaur World, and that's when I got to do that bit in Kageki Shoujo because I finished early. So whenever that happened in August of 2022, come around to the end, or 2021. It was August of 2021. Sorry about that. Come around to 2022. Uh, I auditioned for a Gunbuster, and I don't think I'm gonna get it because I haven't done like anything. Uh, like I've done no anime. I've just done indie games. Like Kageki Shoujo was the one thing to my name that was anime. If you're not familiar with Gunbuster, which just came out, after all this time, because I recorded that in like February of 2022. I play the character of Coach Koichiro Ota, and he is the main dude in it. Like Noriko is the main character, but Coach is like the most primary guy that's in the whole thing. And that was a lot of trust that was put in me by the director Marissa Lenti, um, to do that before I had ever done Walla. And the way that Walla is done, by the way, the reason why like you can't do Walla the same way that like you can do other stuff is because Walla is recorded. You need at least like I think at minimum 3 actors in your booth. And because of that, I wasn't like eligible to be like a Walla house, is what they used to call them. Like during the pandemic, where you'd have a bunch of actors living with each other, and then they could do that together. I didn't live near anybody else that was an actor. Like my fiance does a little bit of it, but she's like, no, I don't want to mess with voice acting as a career. Uh, so we had no way to apply to do any Walla before I moved down. When I moved down, to get into Crunchyroll's roster, that took months. Like the main roster, not Sound Cadences, which is separate. Which all these satellite studios, by the way, have separate ones. If anyone here wants to apply, I believe all of their applications are still open for like the separate rosters. So even if you feel like you can't, it's like, man, I can't get into Crunchyroll. I don't live in Dallas. I believe most of the satellite studios still do remote recording, so that's a good way to do that. If you do not live in Dallas, look into the satellite studios. Um, Whenever I got Coach, that was a lot of trust from Marissa Lenti. They had said that they wanted to get actors that weren't really in anime yet because they wanted it to sound different. Which it was very humbling. Hideaki Anno was like one of my favorite directors ever, so that was a big thing that I got to be part of. So weirdly enough, I got to play a lead before I got to again, one of the male main characters. Do you want to emphasize that? Noriko and Kazumi are the leads. I got to do that before I did any Walla. But whenever I first got into Crunchyroll, which is in about May, I was basically just doing Walla. I did a couple bits. I had Jason Lord, who directed Skeleton Knight. I had taken a class with him. We seemed to work well together. You know, he called me in for my first Walla session, I believe. And then I got cast as sorry if I'm spoiling the show, Skeleton Knight in Another World. I got cast as Prince Dakares, who is like a side villain. He like dies like an episode or two after he's introduced. Um, so it wasn't like a huge part, but it was a named character within like the first like 6 months of me getting into the building. And then I'm still doing Walla. I just did Walla like the other day for a show. Uh, and what is it? I announced like I was Walla in like in Another World with my smartphone less than like 2 weeks ago. So it's still something that I do. I think that some actors will eventually sort of like, I'm going to use air quotes here, graduate out of Walla. I don't think that I'm at that point yet because it's still just like a little over a year since I got into the building. But yeah, Walla is the standard way that they sort of test you out, and then you do bits, which is like individual characters, so it's not just like a group thing. And then you get to do named characters. That's the standard ladder. As I just explained, I completely broke that. I did something very different with sound cadence. But that's you have to be able to do other things, which is also why I would tell everyone if you intend to be a voice actor, don't just do anime, because I wouldn't have gotten that if it hadn't been for Death Battle, if it hadn't been for all the games that got me into Sound Cadence's roster. So diversify. That's the long and short story here. Diversify.
Yeah, that's good, man. Because I like I said, with a lot of these other actors that I've spoken to, they kind of say something similar to that, where it's not just going for the certain roles that you want, or to be in certain shows. You got to be able to put in work and everything else. Whether it's
Absolutely,
commercial,
yeah.
Walla, doing bits and all that stuff. You got to be able to be adaptable when it comes to getting these jobs, because this is how you're going to get paid. You can't just pick and choose what you want. Um, but I think it's really cool to see how you've been able to kind of like do something different than the standard way of doing things. So I like to actually like just listening to how you were able to get to where you're at too. And I guess
Thank you.
just being able to voice an anime, man, was this something that was there like an anime that you watched or grew up with that kind of like pushed you towards this career?
I would probably, well, there was a lot of them. I'll say that like there are a couple memories. I'll share one really quick. That was much later. And this was just like I guess this is to help people who maybe like it's taken so long for me to get there. Whenever I was in Pittsburgh in circa about like 2018, 2019, and I was working a job that was not the job that I'm currently at. It was basically a similar job that paid like less than half of what I make now, with like an hour commute both ways. It sucked. It was in like a trailer. The company is no longer there. It was like in the process of shutting down while I was working there. I remember I would listen to the My Hero Academia like opening in my car, like on like sometimes like on the way there, on the way home, and I'd be like, I'm gonna be in this someday. I promise myself I'm gonna be in this someday. And that was super cool to get to be part of. So that was really really gratifying because like I love My Hero. My friend introduced me to the manga before the anime came out and said, I think this is gonna be really big. It'd be really cool to be able to voice it. And I was like, yeah, it would be. I'm nowhere near there, but that would be cool. Um, moving way further back, whenever I was very little, the show that I like fell in love with naturally, and this is part of why like I moved to Dallas, was Dragon Ball Z. I mean, like I did one of the first things after like auditioning for the little Pokemon fan thing that I did was I tried to make like I had been aware of people making demo reels. So I just did like a Dragon Ball Z demo reel where I tried to do as many Dragon Ball characters as I could on like my crappy little headset mic. And it's not good, but like, I really wanted to be able to like do as many of those as possible because I had played like the Budokai games when I was a kid and I'd watched the show. I remember seeing Chris Sabat and Sean Shamble being like interviewed on like random I think it was on like the Cooler tape at the beginning when they're talking about like Dragon Ball Z Uncut or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, this is so cool. And when you're a kid, these voice actors seem like rock stars, and it took me until much later to really realize that these guys were not like rock stars from birth. They were just actors who found their way into gigs, and they're spectacular ones. I love their performances, but it's not. But they're human. That was what was important that I like had to realize later as a teenager is, oh, I could do that. I could someday do that, and that really pushed me forward. On a personal note, aside from Dragon Ball Z and My Hero, like another one that well, two shows actually also pushed me specifically to Dallas. Beyond those, I'll say it's old now. It's old now, and it is problematic. But the Shin Chan dub that Funimation did was it's very different from Japanese Shin-chan. A lot of the jokes now are about like George Bush, so it's like ancient now. It's like ancient history now. But I loved it. It's horribly inappropriate. It's very it's very dark. Yeah,
I
it
think I
was one of the
remember
few
watching
places
that
that
on,
I
like
saw.
on Adult Swim or something.
Yeah, it was on Adult Swim. Yeah, there's like I will never forget. It was like wow, I can't believe they did that as like a scene transition. It's like uh I can't even describe what's happening in the episode probably on this podcast, but like the transition that they decide to do, like our like Batman announcer is just Chris Sabat saying the word lesbians, and then they transition to the next scene. It's insane. The show is insane. And I love that because I had heard for the longest time, like it had been made aware to like me that California, LA, it's a lot stricter with what you're allowed to translate and like what kind of jokes you're allowed to make. At least in the old days, it's a little stricter now, of course, unfortunately. But Dallas, it's a little bit looser with what you're able to do. You can't go full ghost stories on every show, but you can still make some jokes. I will at least say there are a couple, not even they're not even jokes, for instance, that like I'm like this is whole cloth, we made it up and I can't believe they let us get away with it in Blue Lock. But I will say there are at least two or three reads that I heard that I did as a joke that I'm like I can't believe they let us keep that in. But the other show the thing that breaks my heart every time I bring it up is Case Closed, which never found a home in the United States. It's still like the license got taken away from Funimation, and now it's at LA, so it's got a completely different cast, which ruins it for me. Like all the actors in the LA one are great, they all do great. It's just not the one from when I was like 7 years old, so I just have to accept it. But the Case Closed Funimation dub also was like so influential to me. It's my favorite. It's my favorite show. It's my genuine favorite show of all time. So that also influenced my decision.
You brought up My Hero, man. Like being able to voice one of the vestiges for One for All. What was going like through your mind? Like, did you even read the manga at all? Like, oh, you said you read the
Yeah.
manga, but were you up to date on the manga by that time you got
Oh
that
yeah,
role? Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
okay. So how was that like being able to finally voice a character in My Hero?
Surreal. So before that point, I had been in My Hero before that because in season 6, and this was again like pure happenstance. So what the director of My Hero, who's Colleen Clinkenbeard, will occasionally do is like with some newer actors, she'll like try them out, and you get 5 minutes, legitimately. Most sessions at Crunchyroll are like half an hour, 15 minutes, half an hour, something like that. No, with her, it's like 5 minutes. You get 5 minutes to sort of be like, all right, you're gonna do that bit. Go ahead, let's see how you sound. 5 to 15 minutes. And I got brought in the first episode of season 6. I'm like, well, one, I'm like some random nurse to like the doctor, like the doctor that's working for All for One. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Get off of him! When like Endeavor and Aizawa are there to arrest him and like the rest of the crew. But I'm also this guy who's in like the command room. Uh, the thing that happens is that the unthinkable actually happens. The guy in the command room, the unnamed bit in the command room, that guy is in like almost every episode of the first season. And because this is like a weekly thing, because of the way simuldubbing works, instead of it being like I'm there for like half an hour to do his like 10 lines, it's I go in every single week for like 10 weeks. And I get to work with Colleen, and she's like, yeah, do this bit, do this bit, do this bit. Yeah, do this, do your like control room guy, do this other guy, do this other guy, do this other guy. And then I remember whenever I had went in, because I still didn't think I would get Hikage, and I was just so excited to audition. I was like, there's no way I'm getting this. I'm still too new, and I got it. I was like, oh my god. But I uh whenever I went in to actually record it, because I wasn't told that I had got it. The email just said show up for an hour. And she was like, "You booked Hikage," and Colleen was like, "Yeah, I think that guy in the control room got you this job." So, it took being happening to be like a dude that kept showing up and just was like a bit that had to keep being there, and that was magic. It was magic getting to be part and like getting to like talk directly to like Deku and like talk about All Might and all of that. It's so cool. It's so cool to be part.
Yeah, I can't wait to see like just how the anime is gonna adapt the rest of the manga. Because
Oh,
I've been reading the manga too. I don't want to spoil it too much because I know that folks who are probably watching this are just probably anime onlys. But when it gets to like certain points of to where the manga's at, man, it's gonna be insane just seeing how crazy the show is gonna be in the future, especially with the upcoming season too.
oh yeah, absolutely. I'm really hyped for it. Uh, there, I'm just it is very very cool to be part. And I don't know. I'm not gonna come on here and say like I have insider knowledge because I don't. I've got no idea. I saw it was trending on Twitter that Vigilantes is getting an anime. I don't know if that's true.
Yes.
The place that posted it didn't have like a source, so bear that in
Yeah.
mind.
I can't confirm that either, but I saw that trending, and like
Yeah.
Vigilantes is one where I wanted that to be animated from like I think when because I started reading it probably around like when the second or third volume dropped.
Yep. It's
So
really
once
good.
yeah, so once I started reading that, I was like, okay, this needs to have a series, and like, I really hope that the protagonist in Vigilante, Koichi, I hope he runs into Deku eventually, man, because it's something that it could be just like an anime thing where just like I want to see that interaction happen, so hopefully they make that happen in the future.
Maybe like for like another movie or something. That'd be cool.
Oh yeah, I was I was really hoping like they because they in Vigilantes they tease like Deku and All Might in there, but I really hope in the main story I hope they kind of tease them too, like they they did a really good job in the Vigilantes manga, like kind of going back to the main story, like hey, this is what the class is doing, or like the certain times of what's happening in Vigilantes correlating to what's happening in the main story. But that's what I can't wait to say. I hope that happens. If you want to start your own podcast like Spoiler Force, then sign up with Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout has helped hundreds of thousands of users like me to begin their podcasting journey. With easy to use tools, you can effectively get your podcast into different platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and more. You can view your stats, create audio clips, and even have your own podcasting website. Buzzsprout offers ideas, tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you improve your podcast. Follow the link below, and once you sign up, you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card. This will let Buzzsprout know that I sent you and will also support Spoiler Force Podcast. If you want a simpler way to record both video and audio for your podcast, then sign up with StreamYard. StreamYard is the perfect program to create podcasts, host live streams, and even do video calls. There are many tools that can help you create and design your own personal studio. You can screen share, read live comments, and stream to different destinations like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. You can also download your video and audio once you're done with your recording session. Follow the link below, and once you sign up with the basic or pro plan, you'll earn a $10 credit to use for StreamYard. Happy podcasting. To kind of just move on here, though, I this is the topic that I wanted to talk to you about was
Sure.
the Witch from Mercury, man.
Yeah.
This show was one that I personally like. I underestimated the show because I'm not too big on Gundam, but then my cousin who's been on my podcast as well, he's really into this show right now, and we watched a prologue. I kind of took it as like, okay, this is really cool because with Gundam, especially with Witcher Mercury, I believe this is like one of the first one, or it could be the first one, right, with the protagonist being a female led character. So
I think it is.
yeah, because usually it's always like these, edge lords. That's like the main characters in the past Gundam shows. But to see like Suletta be the main character, and then how it progresses from the prologue to where we're at now, I was completely blown away. and Guel was a character I saw immediately. I was like, that's gonna be a good character. Like I liked him from the jump. Like I was like, okay, he's gonna be like the Bakugo of the show. Um, so how did you get that role for Guel, man?
Well, I'll briefly tell you as well that the way that Crunchyroll works now, a lot of shows they have this system where it's like archetype casting. I don't know if you've heard this yet, but what they will do is it's like teen. It's listed on the files as like teen lead, adult dad or whatever. And then you audition for those with these sort of generic lines, and then directors go in and pick them out. And then that's how it goes in, because it's like there's so many anime that get simuldubbed, they don't have time to audition every show. Very occasionally, though, they will. Like for Chainsaw Man, there were auditions. Like One Piece, for like major characters, they have auditions. Um, in the case of Witch from Mercury, there were auditions. So I auditioned and didn't think I was gonna get it. Frankly, just I'll say this much: I do know. I auditioned for Guel and Elan. Whenever I because I saw Shadiq and I'm like, that's not. I'm a little too white for that. I'm like, I look at Guel and I'm googling what nationality is Jeturk as a name, and I'm like, okay, I could probably audition for that. I also don't think I'm getting it, but I'm like, Guel is probably my best bet. Maybe Elan. And then I I think it's like a week or two later, and I'm like, uh, the summer before I had auditioned for Chainsaw Man, and I was like, oh yeah, it would be so cool if I like got like a big breakout character. And like I got to be Eternity Devil, like one of like the like 20 people that got to play Eternity Devil, but I
Yeah,
did not book any
I
of
heard
those.
about that. There's like a bunch of actors playing that one character because of the voices.
Yeah. So I got to be in it, but not as like a main character. But so like the end result of that was me like for like a week or two being like, you know, just for clarification, I'll say this ahead of time. Really excited for everybody that got cast. Everybody that's in the main cast is great. I was just bummed out because I was like, man, I want to be the main cast. Well, so I was just like, no, I'm still super new because I'm like, I was aware and I had to keep telling myself, look, it's not you have to wait like longer to get. You've been at that point. It's like you've been here for like 4 months. Calm down. You are not going to be like every new main character in every major show. Um, so the audition comes around for Guel. I watched the first few episodes. I'm like noting things for like Guel and Elan in like the episodes that are relevant to the lines, and then I go in, do the auditions, and I try to forget. Figure I didn't get it. Frankly speaking, I go to the bathroom one day, check. I get a notification on my phone. I go, oh, "What is this?" I see it's the casting for Guel. I go, "Oh my god!" From like the bathroom, just like, "Oh, what happened?" My fiance's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I cast this Guel."
Yeah, that reminds me, like, I had Natalie Van Sistine on my show, and she told me
Nice.
like how she got the role from Mjolnir, and she was at a con when that happened. So it's like, just looking at your phone, seeing that you got a role like that, I could just picture you like, oh my god, I got it. It's really nice to hear people's experiences when they get the roles that they didn't think they would get, or like they just think, because you're sending out so many auditions, you don't know, if
Yeah,
you're gonna get
yeah.
these roles anyway.
I have a similar story. Because I'm in Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which I also didn't think I'd be in. Because that's like a Borderlands property. I was like, man, I'm remote. Because and the way that had gone was, I had taken a class with Joel, and he was like, let me know when you like upgrade your booth, because at the time I was still under like my dorm blankets, because I couldn't afford to like get a better setup for a long time, because I was living in a dorm room, and then I was living at my mom's house, and then I moved out to a new place, and I was like, there's no room for anywhere. And then whenever I'd finally moved out, I was like, okay, I'll get a better setup. Finally did that, sent in my stuff to him, and he was like, hey, just record this audition real quick. I do it, and then I find out I'm booked for Tiny Tina. I was in the parking lot of a grocery store, and I also screamed, "Oh my god!" loudly in this parking lot. Yeah, scaring the crap out of my fiance. So this is a problem. I hope I'm not like at an airport at some point getting casted something, and then I get like tackled by the TSA or something. Um, but yeah, it's always super gratifying to hear that. And like I just saw Natalie whenever I was visiting Acon. Just seeing her. She's super nice. She was super nice. Whenever, because she was also the engineer for Gunbuster, actually. I think she was also the scriptwriter. and that she's super cool. Natalie's super cool, and I remember Jill had also worked with me on Parallel Pharmacy, and she sent me like a message congratulating me whenever I got in. Everybody in the cast has been nothing but awesome, so I'm just so pumped to be part.
Yeah, I love the cast for Witch from Mercury, man. Like just you guys like overall you guys did really well, and like I tried to reach out to like to Jason Lord too, like because I know he's done the directing for that show too. That I would love to like just talk to him like how he does this the directing for the show, just because like it's so for me, like I said, Witch from Mercury is one that is the anime like I completely underestimated. Now like I'm like I've been obsessed with it all the way up to where it's almost done now. And I
I
can't
know.
I can't believe the finale is already coming up, man. And dude, like what's your thoughts so far, man? Just seeing how much Guel has grown from like the arrogant like jock type character to this mature young man. What's your view on that? Like on his growth as a character?
So I had whenever I was auditioning, I had a friend who was telling me about Witch from Mercury like before I had auditioned, like before I even knew there was going to be an audition, because I didn't think we were going to get it. If you know this, Dallas has never gotten a Gundam show before. Like it's always been like Canada or LA. Like I didn't think we were gonna get it, so I was just like, yeah, just tell me about it. Because I also I take a million years normally to keep up with anime. So I was aware of like the Bob stuff. I was aware that like my friend was like, haha, Guel Jeturk, he's very funny. So like I go in and I watch it, and as an actor, I'm trying to look for stuff. Um, there, it's really a lot of people, like a lot of acting teachers will tell you like you want to be on the side of your character no matter what, no matter who you're playing. Like you want to come at it so that you understand them, and whatever angle you approach it from, you want to like get in emotionally with him. And with Guel, like I'll say that I did not have the best relationship with my dad, who was not a great guy. So it's something where it's like uh there's in the I'll just say it. In the audition lines, there was a line where it's the line where he's like apologizing whenever his dad like hits him in like the second episode for losing the duel with Suleta. And I'm like, well, you don't, because my friend had asked me about it afterwards, and I because I had listened to like a couple other auditions from people that were like, hey, well, how do you think mine sounded? And there was like stutters on it, and I'm like, well, you don't want to stutter whenever you're like Guel would not stutter when apologizing to Vim, because he'd just get hit again. And I'm like, I shouldn't know that, but I do. And I think that contextualizes it, where there's all this pressure on Guel to be the way that he is, and you can see that whenever like Miorine calls him like, just his dad's lapdog, and he like freaks out. And it's just he's never been in a good situation with his dad, and I think like you can see like just getting out from under his dad's thumb. Well, first of all, like falling for Suleta like immediately, because she's the first person that's like nice to him, not just for his money, not for like being like the tough bro on campus, but just because he's a guy and she respects him. He falls for her immediately, which big boot. I too was a simp in high school. I'm still a simp for my fiance. But I you can see that sort of like desperation to like be loved and be like accepted. Uh, he's like, yeah, whenever his dad like tries to reassign him, he's like, give me another chance. Um, and you can see how much happier he is like as Bob, like living elsewhere with like people that are just treating him normally. And then I I don't know if you want me to spoil stuff on this podcast for like, because the
Oh,
first
I
season.
mean, you can go ahead, because I mean, by the time this episode drops, at least in Japanese or the sub will be done already. So
True, true, true. I just meant for like the first half, because like where he when he accidentally kills his dad and it just breaks him. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, it's Guel. Even in the second part, like he isn't quite able, because he killed him. He can't quite acknowledge like Guel's dad's not a great guy. Like he's just like selfishly scheming and like abusive and like just trying to like get money and power the whole time. And it's just a lot of the stuff he did was not good, and Guel just like cannot kind of internalize that much. He's just so like whether Shadik tells him, whether Miorine tells him, it doesn't matter. Like he's just kind of like, well, look, this business is like my connection to my dad, so that I have to keep running it. And I think if there were a if there were a second season, which I don't know if there's gonna be, I don't know if we're gonna have more Witch from Mercury after this like next final episode. Uh, I would hope and assume that like we'd go into that a little bit more because we haven't gone into how Jeturk is like making stuff worse on Earth. We just Guel is aware and he's grimly nodding at it, and he's had to face the reality of that, but he doesn't quite know what to do about that. It's but he's so strained trying to figure out like how to be a better person because at first he's like trying to like okay, I just want to die in like in like the second
Right.
court, and then he's like, okay, I can't die. I need to like fix my company. Lauda, you go sit over there, and saying Lauda, you go sit over there has not been going great for him recently. So, uh, now he's like, all right, Suletta, you shut me down. I'll support you all the way. It's like he's just trying to navigate like, all right, deal with Shadik, get mad at Shadik, be like, I think there's even a little bit of acknowledgement that what his dad did was not great based on like him not killing Shadik and being able to fully condemn him. Like he's still like, I don't care what you say, but he's still like, I want you to live and like pay for the crime. So I think that there's like a lot of moral complexity going on in his head, and I think behind the scenes, it's interesting to see where Guel has gone and really gratifying as an actor because you feel for him. He's a guy that's got a lot on his shoulders, and I think that moving forward, no matter what happens in this finale, if there is more, if there's not, he's been through a lot. As an actor, that's a great thing to be able to go through. I had always I love Evangelion. I love stuff like that. I loved like G Gundam. It's great to sort of be with this protagonist who's like really flawed and really grappling with like this anger at first for like the world and like not being able to acknowledge how much he like hates living under his dad's thumb, and then being like so mad at himself for like killing his dad, and then going to just like I think you can feel like in season one whenever he starts losing, he's like that anger starts to dissipate and he starts just being like, I'm bummed out, I'm sad, and then like he becomes Bob, and then he's like, I'm happy, then it's sadness again, and now it's just this middle ground of I'm just trying to get out of bed and like make everything work, make sure Jeturk doesn't immediately crash into the ground as a company, because that's what Dad would have wanted. And if we do some war crimes, I'm still that's a work in progress that I haven't figured out what to do yet. So that's like even in that moment where Miorine is like, "What do you mean your company was building a Gundam?" and Guel was like, "I didn't know we were doing that." It's like he's still figuring out what the hell he's doing, and I, I, I love Guel. I really do. I imagine I'm influenced by playing him, but I love Guel. He's trying his best.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I said, Guel's my favorite in the show. Just seeing his growth is like very relatable for myself as well. Like just seeing how he has to own up to what he's done, and then especially like towards when they show him again after he killed his dad. When he finally realizes like I can't be running away from these issues. I have to go and fix my dad's company, and he decides to go back into space, and then like you just see him working with Suletta again and being nice to Mjolnir again, and just he's a whole different person.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I love his dynamic with Miorine for like the episodes where they're stuck together because of
yeah.
his like deal with Miorine, and she's just like you're like a completely different person. And when Miorine especially gets like really depressed, he's just like, sorry about that. It's like, what do you say? Like, I'm someone who like smacked you and knocked you over and broke all your shit before. Now I have to just be like, hang in there, pal. It's gonna be okay.
Well, Bradley, I do have some fan questions here, man. Before we
Sure.
wrap things up, got a few here. We'll go with this first one here. So this first one is from Jovan. Forgive me if I pronounce the last name wrong, but it's Jovan Jukic. Um, they ask, how does it feel working on a Mobile Suit Gundam show? Which you kind of talked about it already, but if you can just elaborate a little bit more.
Sure, it's awesome. I love doing it. What I made like, a bunch of voice actors on Twitter will make like lists of stuff they want to do, and like one of my big goals was like mech pilot, and then I was like, I wanted to be a mech pilot in my head, and like, and in something where like I can freak out, and like have like a full. In my head, I'm like, I love Evangelion. I want to have emotional breakdown in a mech, and my God, I got to do it. I got to do it multiple times. So
Right.
dream come true, man. I love it. I love being part of Gundam. It's a great franchise. I'm probably gonna like go back and try to watch more than because I saw part of Seed, I watched all of Double O, I've seen all of G Gundam, and I've seen all of Witch from Mercury. I'll probably go back, try to watch some of the original stuff, and go watch more Universal Century and other stuff.
All right,
Oh, and
man.
OFMS Team, which is also good.
This next question is from Art by Kooky, which is my cousin Michael. He asked,
Nice.
this is the cousin I was saying that like he actually like loved this show more than I do. He's so invested to where like he's looking at the openings and endings and stuff, and like he was like telling me like, hey, did you see the change in the opening like where
Yeah,
Guel gets
yeah,
the haircut, you know? And I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
I didn't even notice any of that. He was like, yeah, but go watch it again, like it's there. And so he's pointing out all this stuff we've been theorizing, and like I think not the episode after this one, but maybe once episode 168, I'm actually going to be doing a review with him with about Witch of Mercury on this second
Nice.
half. But his first question is, he asked, "What was your first impression of Guel?"
My first impression of Guel is this guy's crazy hair. Like the first thing I thought when I saw him was just this guy has like some crazy hair, like pink hair. People pointed out it looked like Chibity from G Gundam, which yeah it does, which is very funny. And I had also seen like everybody makes the jokes about Revolutionary Girl Utena being like that's the template for Witch from Mercury, and yeah, he is very heavily Scionji. It was very funny learning that like he also Scionji also loses to Utena in the first episode, and then has to go live in the woods in shame. But that show, there. I'm trying to think of like equivalents. It would Sionji's path in that show would be like if Guel went to go live in the woods, came came back to like briefly date, I don't know, like Nika or like Choo Choo, and then went, actually, no, I don't want to date you. I just want to have Miorine, and then lost again, and then went back to the woods. Like that's what Sionji's path is. So he's very different. But I initially got that vibe very much as well.
And then his second question is, which Guel do you personally enjoy working or voicing, the more arrogant one or the more mature one?
Well, I it's tough. It's like asking what's your favorite part of like a roller coaster. I mean, like it's uh for me, like as an actor, like the whole thing. It's or I guess another way of putting it, what's your favorite part of biting a sandwich? Because it's like you need the whole thing to like really enjoy it. Like you like the mature part isn't quite as satisfying without the arrogant part, and of course the arrogant part isn't as like fun without knowing that the mature part is coming later, or like working there. And I think that I think that it's really hard to decide between the two on that basis. I'll say that like if I had to pick like moments, like I as an actor, like with Guel, just because I feel like even though I'm gonna be super indecisive here, like I love the moments of like really really intimate like talking to Suletta in the elevator. I think that those are really sweet, or like even like whenever he's freaking out, like in the bathroom stall where like they have him captured, like those really intimate, quiet moments with Guel are really really good. Or like him talking to, I forget if it was Felsi or Petra, whenever he goes and to see Lauda and Lauda collapses. That's really good. But also like the moments of big intensity. I love doing like the fight scenes. I love like screaming in a Gundam about like beating Shadik, or like trying to beat Suletta, or what have you, and just letting my voice go nuts. All of that is fun. I love playing Guel. That's the short answer. I love playing Guel. It's all of it's perfect.
And that sounds fantastic, man. Like I said, dude, like you've done a fantastic job with this
Thank you.
character, man. Like I said, this character is by far my favorite in the show. Before we do end things here, Bradley, man, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity, man. I hope I get to meet you at a con one day. And hopefully you can come back on the show. We can talk more about either Gundam or even your upcoming projects, man.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me. If you or anyone else want to see me at conventions, just let the cons know. They respond to whenever people request actors. So if you or anyone else wants to see me or any of the other Witch from Mercury cast or anything else at a con, just let the con know.
And for folks who want to follow you on social media, how can they do that as well?
Sure thing. You can look up Bradley Gareth on Twitter, and you will almost certainly find me. But my ad is at anime_brother, which is the name that my sister gave me whenever she would like obliquely refer to me on Twitter. Um, at Bradley Gareth voice actor on Instagram. I don't have a TikTok yet. That's like a at some point thing that I'll do. Is there anything else? Yeah, I'm not going to advertise LinkedIn. No, that's fine. Those are the places you can find me.
And I'll have those links in the show notes and description as well, so you can follow Bradley on there as well. And again, dude, like I said, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate this. I hope nothing but the best for you, man. And I can't wait to see how this ending goes for Mercury.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Well, there you guys have it, man. This is episode 166. Thank you guys so much, and have a great day. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give a review and rate Spoiler Force Podcast. If you want to get all Spoiler Force updates or even peeks at behind the scenes, you can join the Spoiler Force Discord community. And if you'd like to show support, give tips, recommendations, sponsorships, or any collaborations, you can email me at rickyvang92@gmail.com.